The Himalayan range defines the massive scale of the Indian wilderness, yet the current frontier of biological discovery exists at a microscopic level. The ecological data from 2025 and 2026 reveals two conflicting trends occurring simultaneously. In the unmapped geographic fringes, researchers are cataloging entirely undocumented genetic diversity and identifying species previously unknown to science. Inside the established interior heartlands, however, high-density populations of known species are facing record levels of human-wildlife friction and unnatural mortality. We can analyze this paradox by mapping current wildlife data across three specific zones. These represent three distinct vectors: hotspot discovery in the periphery, heartland conflict in the center, and systemic biological infiltration crossing the borders. Navigating this landscape requires moving past isolated facts and schedules to understand the geographical and policy matrix driving these outcomes. We begin in the peripheral hotspots of the Western Ghats, specifically the high-altitude plateaus of Kerala and Maharashtra. In Mahabaleshwar, researchers recently identified the Ghat cricket frog, Minervaria gatti-borealis, a robust species notable for its highly ridged glands. Further south in Wayanad, teams recorded India's first raft spider, Dolomedes indicus. The raft spider serves as a high-sensitivity indicator for water quality. It breathes underwater by trapping an air bubble against its abdomen. Even trace amounts of chemical pollutants break that surface tension, suffocating the spider. Its presence is biological proof of a pristine stream. This pattern of discovery repeats across the country, in the dense forests of Mizoram and Arunachal Pradesh. This region has seen a rapid cluster of new records: the Mizoram reed snake, the Samani slender-armed frog, and the Machuca slender-armed frog. These fringes also yield significant range extensions. This is the Pallas's cat, a mountain cat defined by a thick, long coat and low-set ears. Previously tracked in Sikkim, it has now been formally recorded at 4,200 meters in Arunachal's eastern Himalayas. The Brahmaputra River acts as a physical barrier. Populations isolated on either side develop diverging lineages, forming new species. As newly identified species, the IUCN lists them as not evaluated. We lack data to track their population trends. Under the Wildlife Protection Act, these unstudied amphibians and reptiles are typically placed in Schedule 4. Conserving this peripheral biodiversity depends on rapid microtaxonomy, identifying these species before their unclassified habitats are permanently altered. Moving into the central and northern plains, we see the results of different conservation pressures. The interior heartland is currently defined by the apex predator paradox. Total Bengal tiger populations in India have grown past 3,000 individuals, a significant success for national recovery efforts. However, this growth has concentrated mortality in certain regions. In 2025, Madhya Pradesh recorded 54 tiger deaths, the highest single-state total on record. 57% of those deaths were the result of unnatural causes, specifically illegal poaching and electrocution from agricultural power lines. The leopard faces similar risks. Its wide distribution and ability to survive in human-altered landscapes lead to frequent, often fatal, territorial friction. Poaching remains a persistent threat. In the last 9 months of 2025 alone, the Wildlife Trust of India reported 29 separate incidents involving the illegal trade of big cat skins and claws. Shrinking habitat also increases conflict between predators. In September 2025, a leopard killed a reintroduced cheetah at Kuno National Park. To mitigate this, the government is pursuing aggressive habitat expansion, starting with the transitional mangrove forests of the Sundarbans. Planners aim to add 1,100 square kilometers to the Sundarbans to unify habitats, while Project Cheetah expands to a third site at Noradehi. Legally, these apex species are protected under the strictest possible frameworks, Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act and CITES Appendix I. Broad legal protections and territorial expansion are only effective if daily management can reduce the friction between humans and large carnivores. Beyond habitat conflict, transnational threats are bypassing traditional park boundaries and fencing. This is the Indian pangolin, a mammal protected by overlapping keratin scales. It is currently at the center of the global illegal wildlife trade. Because of its extreme vulnerability to poaching, It is listed under CITES Appendix 1, the highest level of international trade restriction. Poachers target the animal for these keratin scales, which are trafficked for use in traditional medicine. In parallel, an entirely different biological threat is spreading: the giant African snail, an invasive species moving rapidly from Goa to Andhra Pradesh. This snail is a devastating agricultural threat. It is hermaphroditic, lays 1,000 eggs a year, and aggressively outcompetes native snail species. As an invasive pest, it has no legal protection. Management instead requires manual removal and the use of salt or tobacco solutions for eradication. The most volatile systemic threat is zoonotic spillover, the transmission of pathogens from animals to humans or other wildlife. In 2025, the government confirmed an H5N1 avian influenza outbreak among wild lions. The Asiatic lion is uniquely susceptible to such outbreaks because its entire wild population is concentrated in the single genetic pool of Gir National Park. Systemic threats like viral outbreaks or invasive species move faster than traditional forest patrols. Managing these risks requires integrating rapid epidemiological and biological response units into standard forest management. When viewed together, these three vectors show the complexity of the modern Indian landscape. Indian conservation policy now functions as a spatial matrix, integrating data across three distinct geographic layers. In the periphery, it requires microtaxonomy to catalog undiscovered biodiversity in the Ghats and Northeast. In the heartland, it demands macro-landscape management to reduce conflict and accommodate expanding apex predators. Across borders, it requires rapid epidemiological response to address invasive species and disease spillovers. Merely citing an animal's IUCN status or legal schedule is no longer sufficient to understand its actual survival chances. Modern species protection in India no longer happens in isolation. It happens at the critical intersection of raw nature and rigid administrative data. Real-world environmental policy depends on knowing exactly where a species sits within this volatile, interconnected matrix.